Chefs! Learning scales and arpeggio shapes is 100% necessary when it comes to learning improvisation. But I'm sure you've been in situations where you've thought, man, my improvising just sounds like I'm playing a bunch of scales. Or perhaps you've seen comment sections on social media where people get insanely pissed because they think the soloist sounds too scalar. Well, in this lesson, we're going to be covering some things you can do to prevent this. I personally use these techniques to decorate my solos every time I improvise. You should too. The topics we'll be covering in this lesson go as follows. 1. Repetition. 2. Accents. 3. Silence. 4. Enclosures. 5. Passing tones. And 6. Finally, we'll cover your practice routine. Let's get started. First, we're going to talk about repetition. In the words of Adam Neely, repetition legitimizes. Repetition legitimizes. Repetition legitimizes. Which is great if you make a mistake, because if you repeat that mistake, you might be able to cover it up a little. I mean, it's better if you just don't make a mistake at all. But they happen to everyone, so at least this way you can kind of sort of make it look intentional. So repetition is a technique that you really ought to add to your improvising if you haven't already. The general rule is that anything repeated more than 3 times will start to sound cheesy. But do what you want, man, it's your fucking life. It's also worth mentioning that you don't have to repeat a lick immediately. You can play lines in between repetitions too. Check it out. Next, we'll talk about accents. True fact, you don't have to play every single note at the same volume. And for most guitar players, that volume is loud! If you treat every note equal, then they all technically have less meaning. We can separate notes by accenting them differently. We can also make them short, which is called staccato, or we can make them long, which is called legato. Let me show you what I mean. Next, we'll talk about silence. Just like speaking, silence can be powerful. Why not treat music the same? It's important to let your solos breathe. Let's hear an example. Next, we'll talk about enclosures. The term enclosure refers to when you approach a note from both sides, a semitone above and below. Enclosures are like sandwiches. So imagine I want to play this note, C. All I have to do to make it an enclosure is play. Okay? And at the same time, I could start below and then go above, so it would sound like this. And that's an enclosure. That's really it. Enclosures are most commonly used in jazz, but they work everywhere. I'll play a quick solo and you tell me how many enclosures I used. There were five enclosures. If you didn't guess that, then you can check out the video again and maybe just slow it down. And finally, we'll talk about passing tones. Passing tones are exactly what they sound like. They're notes played in passing. The actual notes you choose for passing notes are of little importance because they're only played in passing. We do not target these notes, nor do we sustain them for very long. Passing tones are usually played on the way to a note you're targeting. For example, if you were targeting A, you might play C, B, and then B flat before finally landing on A. Right? So those would be the passing tones. And similarly, you could go the other direction. You could start on F sharp and work your way up before finally landing on A. Passing tones are pretty self-explanatory and super easy to execute. Check it out. And that's it. Those are all simple techniques you can add to your playing today to change your sound and increase your level of improvisational skill. Now for your practice routine. There's a C minor blues backing track above or below this video. Write a 2-chorus solo applying the techniques you've learned in this lesson. Post it in the group and title it 2-chorus C minor blues written solo. Next, improvise a solo over the same track and share it in the group titling the video C minor blues improvised solo. I want you to write one and improvise one because it'll help you learn the techniques better. It's kind of like rewriting things from a textbook into your own notebook in school. This process helps a lot of students memorize things. Same shit here. Then finally, get feedback and repeat this process until you get bored with the backing track and or reach a point of diminishing returns. Brandon, when can I move on? After you get bored with the backing track and stop improving and or reach a point of diminishing returns. Brandon, why am I doing this? To remove some of the scale from your improvising. Now just leave!